what's the word they use to describe it? Machista? Machista.
Yeah, machista.
Machista. That's just like a cute name for being a dick to women? What does that even mean?
If you have a name, like really succinct name for toxic masculinity that you just already had, I think that's kind of a sign that it might have been an issue for a while.
I be chasing paper, got to win my mommy agents. Getting strong, I look like ages 17, man, I be wasting. These bitches steady hating, get them off, ain't nothing major. Got 4 bitches, I ain't got no fucking favorites. I ain't off drugs, snoring, I'm so restoring. Never been bitter, my bitches look like Lauren. Crack so many foreigns, cash she be going. Back to MIA, cut the deep boring. Louis the buckle bitch, boy, I stay with a G.
He was always checking up on my friend's Facebook. I just don't think I could ever date a Latino.
Why? They're so passionate though.
Yeah, I heard they're the best in bed. No, they're like super aggressive and sexist. Jenny, that's just how Latino men are though.
Wow, that's a generalization. Who invited her? This is TheKatCall, and I'm calling this shit out. Where do we get the idea that Latino men...
I just want to address that they started it with like a completely realistic example.
Of how, yeah, right.
Yeah. Why would you open with that if you plan on dismissing the entire concept?
Where do we get the idea that Latino men are innately machista? You can thank the media for stereotyping Latino men as aggressive criminals and lovers. In the 1990s, films like Tony the Greaser, Bronco Billy...
I'm sorry, that was just a group of Latino women talking about how they see Latino men, and then just another Latino woman comes up and lectures them.
And tells them why their experience is not real.
Revenge introduced a Mexican trope known as the bandito, an outlaw, an aggressive and violent character. Today, the bandito trope can be seen as plain old criminals, drug lords, and gangsters. We then have the Latin lover trope. He's romantic. He has a passionate temperament. He's a ladies' man. And of course, he's highly sexual. Although the original Latin lover trope was aimed at Mediterranean men like Italian star Rudolph Valentino, it slowly morphed to be synonymous with Latino men, like in the film Latin Lovers, where a white woman travels to Brazil and meets Roberto Santos. Or in the film The Kissing Bandit, where Frank Sinatra plays the son of a Mexican bandit. Yeah, Frank Sinatra plays Mexican, but we'll keep that for another episode.
Okay, you do that. You keep that for another episode. Cool, you're just bringing up a random fact about whitewashing in Hollywood is like that has anything to do with the argument you're making right now.
I don't understand how that skit, which first of all is a weird way to start off a video that's just explaining how all of these women's perceptions are wrong.
Yeah, it's 3 against 1, lady. That's what I see.
It's like 4 against 1.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about the media, which if you're making an argument about the media dictating my perceptions of Latin men, you're obviously not talking to Latino people. Like, you're arguing... Why would you be arguing that way if my reference for Latin people wasn't just the media?
And then, spinning your wheels a little bit, just saying, yeah, the media has always influenced public opinion, but it still doesn't explain, like, everything for why the stereotype exists.
The media examples they're using are not media that Latin people watch either. This is a weird thing that we're watching right now.
Hey, you know, ladies, how you were watching that Frank Sinatra movie where he's Mexican? Because that's the movie that all Latin women love, like, what? And have seen.
So who are you talking to? Obviously not any of the women that you were portraying yourself talking to. What is this?
Yeah.
I want an explanation. I'm confused.
We've seen the Latin lover trope in characters like Zorro, Ricky Ricardo, Gomez Adams, and even some cartoon characters.
Venga conmigo, señorita. Le enseñaré las maravillas de la galaxia y juntos, con nuestro amor, venceremos al mal.
So, are Latino men the only people to be womanizers? To be extremely aggressive? To be overtly sexual? No, of course not. But they've been stereotyped as innately machista, particularly in comparison to white men.
Wait, hold on a second.
White people don't use the word machista. This is not continuous in any way. Who are you talking to? I don't get it.
And I have seen white guys portray aggressive macho roles too.
Well, while Leo DiCaprio can play a sex-addicted, money-hungry womanizer in one movie, there's like 20 other movies where he isn't. Trejo has basically made a career out of playing a sexual... So what? Like, what's the big deal? It's TV. It's for fun. Well, the media has always played a big role in influencing public opinion, and these over-the-top...
That's the second time she said that.
...messages of Latino men influence how teachers view Latino boys, how the police interact with Latino men, or how employers view Latino applicants. No one is free of internalizing these messages, but the good thing is that once you're made aware of these messages, it makes it easier to break them down. All right.
Okay, so you're talking about white people digesting media. That's everything you were just saying is directed at me, and you're telling me how to perceive media. Like the grain of salt I need to take everything with to not stereotype, I guess. It kind of seems like you're just telling me to ignore it.
Yeah, and spinning her wheels in the process. I just feel like... And with this, that Bell's palsy face she likes to make at the camera.
Come on. Ugh. Why won't she stop doing that?
This machista isn't a cultural thing. Actually, it is. Because chauvinism and machista culture is part of all of our cultures. Because we live in a male-dominated society. Oh my god.
Okay.
Another general fact that's true.
Okay, that one sentence. I'm sorry. I need to hear that again.
Alright, so being a chauvinist machista isn't a cultural thing. Actually, it is. Because chauvinism and machista culture is part of all of our cultures. Because
Machista culture is part of all of our cultures. Machista culture is part of all of our cultures. Man, I don't know if you're telling me about this like it's the first time hearing about it, if that exists in the same way in my culture. That just,
Machista cultures exists in all of our cultures.
Like chauvinism, maybe. But obviously machista doesn't. Obviously it's unique.
Because of the name?
It's a unique cultural conception, yes.
Right. Because it's so what you're saying is technically it's impossible for specifically machista to exist in other cultures. Well, I think she means just more a vague point that men are pretty shitty to women in other cultures. I think that's really what she's getting.
Yeah, but like the specific romanticization of it and all that you're talking about
is unique.
Right.
To that, yeah, like, that's what machista is. Yeah, I don't know. I guess white people certainly don't romanticize it the same way.
Control is not seen as very romantic.
Because we live in a male-dominated society. Oh my god, so I should stay away from all men, right? Well, no, but what you should do is judge people on an individual basis and not group them together based on cultural background.
Yeah, I know. We know. Who doesn't know that?
I don't have to group people, but I can deal with people on individuals. I can date Latin men. I've dated many. And I can still notice that. I can judge people on an individual basis you judge men on an individual basis and you still, find out that they're chauvinistic.
Can't cultures exist and people be judged on an individual basis? Can't both of these things? These are not mutually exclusive things. But how does a culture exist then?
We literally say that all the time.
Yeah. And if I'm not allowed to make the observation just because you say so, it's not a good enough argument.
Men are all taught sexism, but obviously we still fuck them, so it's kind of implied that we're supposed to judge them on an individual basis. That's never
exactly
the case.
You gonna eat that?
Here's the check, ladies.
Oh, she's got it. Oh, you're leaving? Thanks, girl. Oh, okay, I got it. When's the next brunch? Damn!
I like how they didn't even listen to her. They just leave her, abandon her immediately.
You a dizzy bitch, get the fuck on with that funny shit. I was fucked up with no master plan, I saw my peoples ain't leaving shit. Everybody in my corner coming with me, nigga, I ain't leaving shit. Now everything pretty start but these portions, and no keys to shit. Bitch, fuck your opinion, they don't feed me, nigga. I ain't where I wanna be, so fuck sleeping, nigga. You say nothing.
Man, I never looked at the comments before. Holy shit. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. This is just funny because it's a lot of Latino women commenting, arguing against it. There's just some chick saying, of course no one's naturally anything. It's operant conditioning, learned and reinforced. And that's Savina Zuniga. Don't forget how mothers and grandmothers play a role in raising men to be machismo. Seriously, I get fed up with my family back home who treat the men in the family differently than the women. Yeah, that is something that they really avoided that entire video. Thank you for pointing that out.
And this is a person based on their experience, which I guess also is not valid, just like the 4 women in the video, whose experiences weren't valid.
Of women getting cyber-stalked by Latin men? Jesus Christ, it's not how Latinos are portrayed in the media, in parentheses, well, just a tad bit. It's also based on, I don't know, how they were raised. Latinos see how their dads act macho and how their mothers act fiercely with each other, but submissive and obedient to their husbands. Of course, there are exceptions to this, but if you were raised in a Latino background or any at all, you will find machismo.
Yeah, and see, what I love is, like, these commenters are the people that I believe she did not want them to find this video.
People made call-outs that I didn't even know how to make because I'm fucking white.
Let's hear some.
So one of them said, Antonio Banderas isn't Latino, he's from Europe. Because they were talking earlier about how the Latin lover trope was originally, like, for Rudolph Valentino and European men, but it's morphed to being specifically Latin American men.
Yeah.
And then, like, one of the examples was a European guy.
Oh, yeah. Antonio.
I wouldn't even know how to call that out because I don't know who the fuck Antonio Banderas is.
Oh, man. He's a sexy Latin actor.
I don't know.
From the 90s.
See,
who's quite good. And I think he's like, yeah, he's Spanish. But there's also a cut rate version of him, Antonio Bandanas. He looks similar and he just wears a bandana all the time. That's not true. He doesn't exist. That's not a real person, but just imagine if it were.
There's a lot of Latin women saying that they still refuse to date Latin men, which is kind of sad. But there's just people saying, like, sadly, all my Ecuadorian male family members are actually sexist as fuck.
Well, that's just a coincidence, I'm sure.
Yeah, all your family members, like, when you probably know a lot of your extended family. Really, I don't need to watch a movie to know how Latino men are. Sure, hashtag not all men are machistas, but they sure aren't shit just based off life experiences with them. All the systems you mentioned are huge factors and barriers for them to evolve, but come on, they have brains. They should recognize how to act by now. From Ivane Sanchez.
These are all white trolls trying to make people into racists.
Yeah, all of them. Oh my god, all of them.
People just know. We can talk. It's all right. We still love you, but let's be real.
Yeah, people talk about respectability politics. And, like, we shit on, like, let's say Bill Cosby for that. Like, before, heinous sex crimes came out, people were still, particularly his own community, were still kind of pissed at him for, like, all the Uncle Tom shit that he did.
Right.
With, like, the pull up your pants crap.
Yeah.
Like, we're sick of that, but we're still allowing people to make these appeals that, like, you have to be completely innocent of any social problem in order to deserve not being discriminated against based on your race. To me, I see an appeal to that sensibility in this video, and I don't think that's a sensibility that should be appealed to.
One thing they gon' hate, I poured up another 8. Pussy nigga, I'm straight. All that blue shit, stay away. They say that I'm trippin'. I'm strapped in this bitch with no sense, bitch. And my bitches, they can get ignorant. Don't make no difference. If you a snake, keep your distance. My niggas shoot like Pippin. They say that I'm trippin'. I'm strapped in this bitch with no sense, bitch. And my bitches, they can get ignorant. Don't make no difference. If you a snake, keep your distance.
There's a lot of YouTube content made by POC that is made to only be seen by white people. People understand, like, most of this country consists of majority sheltered white people who aren't familiar with what other cultures are like. So what are you going to do now? There's the internet, so you're going to go on it. What's the easiest thing to do on the internet if you're young? YouTube. What's the word they use to describe it? Machista? Machista.
Yeah, machista.
Machista. That's just like a cute name for being a dick to women? What does that even mean?
I think we say machismo more often, like white people would say that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, okay.
I don't actually know which word is used that often because my knowledge of Spanish is pretty small, but it's that, like, cultural idea. I guess, like, masculinity as a broad amorphous thing, same way.
Talks about how Latin men are portrayed in this way. And you already know, I'm part Mexican. I have a dad who's Mexican. I grew up in Chicago.
Yeah, I grew up in Aurora.
You grew up in Aurora? Oh, that's right.
Which seems to be mostly Latino people.
Yeah.
Like,
it's
they run
like
all
Elgin a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very similar. They run all the businesses and stuff. The food is really good, just standard.
And you've lived in the city now for some time.
For some time, yeah.
Yeah, and these channels, I think, are made for people who...
They can't go and check.
They can't go and check. And they are people who just don't... They're just afraid of the city and brown people, and they never come, or they just stay away from where they exist in the suburbs. So their information is, like, almost zero outside of going to, like, a Mexican restaurant. So I understand, like, why you want, like, explainer videos, and I understand why you want people to be less racist. So, like, I get...
Like, yeah, I'd say most of the stuff on the mitú channel is... I found a lot of stuff that didn't seem to be directed at me. I found a lot of stuff that seemed to be genuinely more helpful and coming from a better place. But there is a streak of videos like this coming from different outlets that I just think are asking for argument and, like, not very progressive in that way.
They're not very progressive in the way that they're what I've described before to be, like, level 1 wokeness.
Yeah.
I think to be progressive, you have when it gets uncomfortable is when you, like, actually do get to know that cultures there's a difference. But that's why we even define things as culture, because one isn't like the other. So we have to acknowledge that you can make distinctions. And she makes the argument, she goes, they're not the only ones. Like, we know that, no shit.
A lot of these videos, like, there's two halves of the level 1 social justice mentality. One is completely fine, and I have almost no issue with it, except, like, but, like, I recognize it as being, like, introductory. And then there's this stuff. Like, there's the what makes someone a puta video. Like, that's fine. That's just, like, slut is bullshit video, but let's make it more accessible to Latin people. That's fine.
Yeah, cool. That's an important one to make.
But then there's this other section of the content that is, like, not that you shouldn't stereotype people, but just saying that stereotypes are, like, not true, or that they can't be true. And to me, I don't understand.
Well, I think,
like, you're setting people up to realize one day that that's not exactly a reality.
Yeah.
And you could set them back a lot by doing that. And I think that's bad.
Your man's up when you plumb, boy, you dead wrong. Try that shit with one of us, you gon' be dead soon.
I think the reason this type of content appeals to so many white people that watch it is because they actually want to enter, like, a state of willful ignorance. Everyone is the exact same because it's just easier for them. It's easier to believe that.
I do think, in a way, it sort of gives white people an out because, like, there are intra-communal problems amongst every single cultural group known to man. They exist, and they are often distinct from problems that other cultural groups face. And when these videos are made that insist that I have to ignore that, more or less, I get to, which is kind of nice. That's kind of cushy, just to be able to ignore all these problems because they don't affect my community. And I thought that was supposed to be the opposite of what being progressive is supposed to be about.
I'd have to agree.
But, who am I to say?
Who's to say? Who are we to say?
Let's explain who we are to say, because I know people are wondering, like, well, okay, you're just saying Latin men are more aggressive. Prove it. Well, let me offer this example. Let's start with this. Let's start here. The most privileged women that exist in the world are white women.
Yes.
No dispute.
Yeah.
One reason for that, let's take a white woman in America and let's say like a Mexican woman who has just immigrated here with her Mexican husband, and she the only connection she has to her whole existence here is just this husband, living in a scary country, new country where people are already shitty to you, and you know they're like shitty and racist. So you rely just on this one man. The opportunity for him to be psychologically abusive, physically abusive is greater, because there's really, if you are a white woman and you're in an abusive relationship and you think you have nowhere to turn, imagine being an immigrant woman to a new country. It's not like they're punching women in the face all day, but it's a little extra edge that they can get away with, because like they know that the woman really has nowhere to turn.
Yeah. And how I think you mentioned this is, it's not so much like, as this video is going to say, it's not like white people don't beat their fucking wives. Like, that's not what anybody is saying. But there is a little bit of a difference in how confident they are in it, to the point where I actually see it when I'm out. It's often talked about that lots of different groups have a resistance to mental health talk, and with that often comes a resistance to domestic abuse discussion as well.
Yeah. And it's not like Latin men own the rights to abusing women. Like, we're not saying that.
Who's to
White
say?
men abuse women in the privacy of their own homes.
Yeah, it's a cultural difference. Like, if you have a name, like really succinct name for toxic masculinity that you just already had, I think that's kind of a sign that it might have been an issue for a while. Mm-hmm. If you have a word for it like that.
True, yeah, and this is all just staying consistent with the idea, again, that white women are the most privileged in society.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about how and why. This is part of that.
And I have noticed that sometimes I will see people acting in a strange way who are white men, treating their girlfriends in a way that I find inappropriate. And their girlfriends, their partners are often Latina, and I think it comes with a racial expectation that will be more accepted. If we need to make white people the bad guy here, then, like, yeah, that happens as well. Like, we're people who are conscious of it use it in a negative way, and we are protecting that by not letting everyone talk about it.
Exactly. We're almost, it's almost becoming like similar to the Catholic Church type shit, where you just like, you're not shining light where you know it needs to, because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it's the dirty work that we have to start doing. And if we're really wanting to make a difference, if we're just trying to make white people feel better about their own white guilt, and we're just trying to make POC feel less attacked by white people, then sure, these videos might help for that.
But I don't like the idea that being socially aware as a white person also requires this obligation to ignore problems that affect different cultures disproportionately. Like,
who are we to say?
In Latin American feminism, the issue of femicide, of murders of women, particularly in domestic situations, but murders of women, like, is a forefront issue. There are people who, when they don't have to deal with white people, are completely willing to admit that this is a really pronounced issue. I guess people just don't trust white people
to know these things and not
balance this out.
Yeah, I don't either, to be honest. Like, I don't think most Latin people do want to like really talk about this, especially with white people, because it's too risky that you're just going to fuel the racism they probably already have.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know this information and approach it constructively and with real concern even.
Well, let's discount the people who will use any problem a community faces as like a one they have over them. Those people are just pieces of shit. There's a
lot of them, though.
They cannot be reasoned with. But I think most people are more accepting of the idea that something can be a problem in a specific community and not be something that should cause you to have a negative reflection about every single person.
Funny these niggas jokes. That nigga ain't stingy, that boy broke. I lost Mike, I couldn't cope. 160 for a fold. Told Quazy and Snow, man, them niggas gotta go.
This was Neon Voices. The music was from Quazy, Quazy.